Okay, so I was actually going to do a video about this article on Euronews that I read this morning. And by the way, this story has now already been all over Western mainstream media. I mean, it's almost like it was coordinated or something. I know, that's crazy talk. That never happens. But anyway, the article says France, Germany, and other Western allies warn of growing Iranian intelligence plots. Now, the funny thing, by the way, about this story is that this morning I actually saved a copy of this story, and then it used to say the United States and many of its NATO allies, and now it says France, Germany, and other NATO allies. So for some suspicious reason, they felt they had to change it all of a sudden. But anyway, let's not go into that right now. So what this story is about the United States of America and some of its allies. By now, I wouldn't call them allies anymore. I think subordinates might be a much more accurate description. But anyway, they put out a joint statement, and in this statement, they're basically accusing Iran, the Iranian intelligence service, of increasingly threatening to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America. And they're saying these services are increasingly collaborating with international criminal organizations to target journalists, dissidents, Jewish citizens, and current and former officials in Europe and North America. And of course, they're urging the Iranian government to stop these illegal activities and so on. All right, now I'm going to do something that not many people in the global West seem to do. Let's seriously take a look at what Iran had to say about this. So I can be brief about that. Iran rejects the accusation. So they're saying that these claims are baseless accusations, right? And they have a point, I think, because if you look at this statement, it's all just a bunch of very vague allegations, nothing of evidence, no examples, no proof, nothing. It's just some wild allegations. Now, whether these allegations are true or not, I don't know for sure. No one does, or almost no one does. The thing is, if you think about it, that is also true for most articles you read in the news. So this is just another one of those situations where you're kind of gonna have to choose what you believe. So based on your frame of reference, you're probably gonna go one way or the other, right? Now, by the way, this is one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reasons, why I actually started this channel. Because, and I know this is going to sound a little bit arrogant, but bear with me. So I believe that the frame of reference in general of people in the global West especially is very limited and is very distorted, is very manipulated by the Western propaganda machinery, right? So, of course, you don't have to believe anything I say, anything I believe, right? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show people that there are other ways, there are multiple ways of looking at a situation. There are multiple possible points of view of looking at a certain story, a certain occurrence, right? And if you're willing to explore that, you might come to different insights, to different conclusions. So that is what I'm trying to do with this channel. Now, if you ask me specifically about this situation, whether I believe that these allegations are true or not, now, based on my frame of reference, there are, of course, some things that I consider very likely. There are other things that I consider very unlikely. Now, if I add it all up, I have to say that no, I absolutely do not believe that these allegations are true, not for a second. Of course, there might be some truth to some elements within these allegations, but overall, I don't believe they're true, and I believe that something else is going on. Let me explain. Now, I believe that it is very, very clear that the United States and some of its allies want to weaken Iran. They want to neutralize Iran so that it's no longer a threat to US hegemony in the Middle East, because that is what it is all about, US hegemony. The United States is currently fighting a war to try to regain its hegemonic status in the world. Now, what we're currently seeing happening in Ukraine, I believe, is very much a part of that. Also, the trade war that's been going on and Donald Trump throwing all kinds of tariffs around is also part of that. The final piece of the chessboard potentially is China. So the United States is already very much preparing for a war with China. And another very important piece of the puzzle is, of course, what we're seeing happening with Iran. The United States is trying to weaken Iran. Now, the method of choice by the United States is, the method of choice to weaken Iran is regime change. Okay? Meaning that they want to get rid of the current, the sitting government and replace it ideally with a puppet regime, which, by the way, they've done before. Back in the 50s, I believe, they overthrew the government of Iran and they replaced it with a puppet regime, which ruled with an iron fist, which was absolutely terrible for the Iranian people. And they ruled until the uprising, the revolution of 79 or something like that. Forgive me if I have the date wrong. But anyway, they've done it before and they want to do it again to Iran, just like they've done it to so many other countries in the Middle East and so many other countries around the world. Now, anyone that thinks that I just made all of this up out of thin air, I'd say, well, there's a lot of evidence to support this, to support these claims. And I think that one of the best pieces of evidence is this policy paper published by the Brookings Institution. The Brookings Institution is one of those US think tanks. By the way, this is freely available online. You can just look it up and you can download it. This policy paper is called Which Path to Persia? Options for a New American Strategy Toward Iran. This policy paper, by the way, was published in June of 2009. That's 16 years ago. Now, this policy paper in detail describes how the United States is going to regime change Iran, right? And I believe that part of this script has already been activated. I mean, from the fake negotiations from America with the Iranians to the cowardly surprise attack from Israel on Iran, and of course the United States then joining in bombing Iran. They've been bombing the nuclear facilities. I mean, all of that is almost word for word described in this policy paper of 2009. Now, according to this policy paper, the objective is regime change, right? Now, the United States and Israel, which, by the way, as I mentioned, I consider to be one entity posing as two different countries, especially within the context of tensions with Iran, they haven't achieved their goal yet. So, as I've also mentioned before, I fully expect them to have another go at this. So I'm afraid that this war is far from over. Now, the problem is that if the President of the United States, which, by the way, happens to be Donald Trump, but I firmly believe that if it was any other president, they would also follow the same script. So anyone who believes that all of this, all the tensions with Iran and the war with Iran is happening because it is Donald Trump that is the president now, I'm sorry, I think that's a little bit naive. Don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely not a fan of Donald Trump, but I firmly believe that any other president would have their own style, but they would roughly follow the exact same script, right? But anyway, if in this case Donald Trump would start a war again, would start attacking Iran again out of the blue with no reason, I think that would be political suicide. I mean, even its own base would not accept that. The Democrats would eat him up alive. That would not go down well. So, from their perspective, they need something. They need to create something. They need to fabricate something to pin on Iran to make Iran look bad. Now, The United States happens to be very, very good at that. I mean, one of the best examples of that is what we've seen with Iraq. That happened some decades ago, where the United States government claimed that Iraq, so the Saddam Hussein regime, had weapons of mass destruction, and they had ties with some international terrorist organizations who were responsible for the 9/11 attacks. So they used that to create a mandate in the United States and in Europe. They entered Iraq, they killed 1 million people, and then it turned out that all these allegations that they made against Iraq were simply not true. They were blatant lies. Now, looking again at this joint statement by the United States and some of its allies, based on my frame of reference and weighing all the possibilities and probabilities and improbabilities against one another, this to me seems very much like a textbook example of a fabrication of allegations against Iran to make Iran look bad. Now, the United States is probably not going to go to war with Iran over only this, but to me this seems like planting a seed for the next demonization campaign against Iran, which will probably continue until at least a significant portion of the population in the United States and in Europe are potentially ready to get behind the idea of another attack against Iran. That's what this looks like to me. But anyway, that's just what I believe. Now again, you don't have to believe anything that I say or anything that I believe. I'm just trying to offer a new perspective that might broaden your view. Now, I'm also very interested in what you think about all of this, so let me know, leave a comment, and whatever you say or whatever you believe, don't forget to like and subscribe.